What is your age and how old are you?
What is my age? I am 74 years old.
What's your name?
My name is Jack Longer.
What is a quote or motto that you live by? Explain why.
Do what's right. And the reason I have that as a quote is because when I was a young kid, my dad would always say, do the right thing. So whether we were building a garage or doing some delivery of a charitable contribution or whatever, my dad would always say, do the right thing. So that's kind of why I grew up living by that.
So, how has this quote or motto shaped who you are?
Trying to do the right thing. Now that always hasn't worked the way it should have, but for the most part, I like to think of myself as a good person and trying to do the right thing, not only for myself, my family, and my friends, but also for strangers on occasion when I can.
What did an average day look like for you growing up?
Far different than what you guys have. We were the typical family that your parents kicked you out of the house and said, "Don't come back until supper time." But we lived out in the country by a lake in northern Minnesota, and we had lots of room to run in the woods behind the house, and we lived right on the lake, so we could go swimming and boating and do all kinds of stuff. We had more than enough things to do, but we didn't have a phone. So, but usually showed up when we were hungry or thirsty or needed a snack, and Mom was happy to provide that.
Who would you say was or is your role model?
I guess when I grew up, I had all kinds of role models. My dad was my first one, I suppose, and then when I first started working, I worked construction, and I worked with my uncles. So I had like 3 or 4 uncles that I worked with and for as I was growing up, and I learned something from each of them, something different, something that helped me through my life. But I guess those were my role models.
What would you say is a key memory from your life that contributed to you growing up as a person?
Well, I guess the earliest one, I think I told you about this before, is when I was a little kid. I don't know, I must have been about 10, maybe 11 years old. A bunch of us neighbor kids were out playing in the woods, and there was a little grassy knoll that we used to play hide and seek on and stuff like that. And I had gotten a pocket knife, and I think I got it from my grandfather. And somehow I lost that pocket knife. And I was in a panic because I was told, don't lose this knife. So I got all the kids, and we went in a circle, kneeled down on the ground, and we said a prayer to Jesus to help me find that knife. This was after we had already searched the whole area and couldn't find it. And then after I said the prayer, I said, okay, let's all get up and we'll search this place again. And as I was getting up, I pushed myself up off the ground, and I felt something underneath my hand. And I picked it up, and there was my pocket knife in my hand. And I thought, holy mackerel, there really is a Jesus. And I think from that I learned a couple of things. My faith increased, for one thing, but I learned that there are different types of people. Some of those kids would not believe me. They thought it was a total bunch of BS that I was doing. Some of them questioned. They said, really? Did that really happen? Is this for sure real? And some of them just said, yes, there is a Jesus. Holy mackerel. And they went sky high. So you have those different, and all through life, I've found those different type of people, those that believe just about anything somebody tells them if it sounds good and looks good. And then there's people that question and may believe, but they also think about it and they analyze it. And then you have the people that just don't believe you and just think you're full of BS. So it was a good learning experience for me.
Nice. Is there anything that happened to you that you wish you could change?
I don't know, in my years, there are lots of things that happened from throughout my life that I wish I could change, but again, it's all in. I firmly believe that it's all a plan, and that we are part of God's plan, and He is directing us, and that no matter what happens, even if we don't feel that it's for the best, it is part of His plan, and eventually we'll find out why.
Tell me about one challenge you faced and how it has affected your life.
I guess when your grandma and I were first married, within a couple of years, we wanted to raise a family. So she was pregnant, and she was almost full term, and we were all happy, and everything was going well. Then all of a sudden, things just made a turn, and we lost that little baby, and that was a big kick in my butt for me. I mean, it was a pretty stressful time. It was sorrowful, but what I got from that is a closeness with your grandma that probably helped us through our entire 50 years of marriage. When she was laying there in the hospital and we were mourning for this little baby that we lost, it was like we could almost read each other's minds. There was just a connection there between us, and that has carried through for the most part. We've had our ups and downs, but for the most part, that has carried us through this 50 years.
What is a value that your parents taught you?
I think we already covered that.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
What advice would you give to me as I go into adulthood?
Do the right thing. I think you're headed down a good path, Hudson. And as far as, I guess the only advice I'd give you is don't be so hard on yourself. I think you have a good head on your shoulders. I think you're headed down the right path. You're smart. You're physically fit, and you do well in school and have friends and stuff. Just don't be so hard on yourself.
Okay.
And don't beat up on your brother so much.
Hey, it's character development.
For him, not you, right?
How are things different today for kids than from when you grew up?
I think the biggest thing is this. I mean, there's more brains in this than there was in the first space shot. The first time man went to the moon, they had fewer brains in their rocket ship and all their stuff than you carry around in your pocket. So this is the biggest thing. And it can be good and it can be bad. I mean, it can open a window to the world that we never had when we were kids. But in doing so, you see way more than we do. You can have an understanding of things, and maybe that's good and that's bad, because at some point you have to take all that information in and figure out what's right. So,
What was it like to start working, and how old were you?
well, I started working for my dad when he owned a couple of root beer stands. And I started working when I was maybe 12 years old. And it was like a part-time job, and we'd go in and wash jugs. We had glass jugs that my dad would buy from, I don't know, some guy. He had a salvage business. And he'd buy gallon and half gallon jugs from them, and they'd all have to be clean, so they could fill them up with red beer and sell them to the public.
Mhm.
So that would be the first job I had. I was a jug washer, and I washed thousands of jugs. But after that, I went into construction. I worked as a millwright, became an apprentice millwright, and graduated to a journeyman and worked for 13 years as a millwright before I went into electronics. That's about it.
Perfect. Well, thank you
All right.
for
That was a pleasure.
interviewing.
Love you, kid.
Love you too.